Hello, and welcome to American Heron Wargaming. This is a battle report for Fallout Factions. Soon after my first game of Factions, my opponent and I had an unexpected alignment of free time again, so we were able to get another game in relatively quickly. So quickly, in fact, that my opponent still had their Brotherhood force from last time boxed up and ready to go. They were led by a paladin with a flamer, 2 field scribes, one with a crusader pistol and one with a laser pistol. Then a regular knight with a ripper to bring some melee strength. The grunt slots were filled out by an aspirant with a laser rifle and an initiate with a recon hunting rifle. I wanted to try out the operators gang that I built immediately after getting the starter kit, before I had any idea which weapons would be good or useful. My gang is led by a boss with a combat rifle, with a sniper perk that lets her shoot past enemies who try to body block her shots. My champions are 2 made men, one with a syringer and the other which has an upgraded combat shotgun and grenades. Then I had a scaver with a combat rifle, and another with a marksman's handmade rifle, also with a sniper perk. I had only one psycho with a 10mm pistol and hand weapon, and then 3 wasters, 1 with a handmade rifle, and 2 with 10mm pistols and hand weapons. This time around we were trying out scenario 3 from the comp kit called Treasure Hunt. This one was interesting because the way to win is simply to drag those small gray objective markers from their initial locations into your deployment area. So technically there's no combat required, it just helps prevent your opponent from getting away with loot. I had an inkling that with so many activations that I'd have an advantage. Since I brought a Nuka-World gang, I also brought some of my Nuka-World terrain to theme up the board a bit. We got set up, and I may have been a little careless in my deployment. I had to set up first though, so I didn't know exactly where my opponent's pieces were going to go, and I didn't have a whole lot of terrain to hide behind. So I figured that I'd just hide the most important pieces as best I could, and then hope to force my opponent to play cagey with fewer resources. Their Flamer Paladin was not on the board. They had opted to use their ploy again for their Brotherhood's special vertibird drop deployment, which is honestly probably the best idea for the Brotherhood. It's just an amazing ploy. My opponent kicked things off by running one of their scribes in position to grab some loot next turn, safely in cover. I had my waster move up and put some lead down range into the initiate, netting a harm. The aspirant took advantage of my champion's position to get a shot in, but also only landed a single harm. I decided to go for something bold. I activated my other champion, who used a get moving action to move herself up onto the container, but also move up the psycho and one of the wasters. One of them is already set to grab an objective token, and the other one prepared to jump on the next one. Then the champion fired with a syringer, but I didn't get any lucky rolls to kick in the poison, so she only got 1 harm through. And for her trouble, she got a harm back, courtesy of the long-range initiate. I pushed up my scaver with the marksman's handmade rifle, who added another harm to the aspirant's tally. My opponent activated the aspirant again, making great use of Faction's action system to fire again at my champion, and again only netting 1 harm. They also used one of their stim packs to heal up their harm and negate all the damage that I'd done so far. For my next activation, I did another double up. The waster dragged 1 objective marker into my deployment zone, and the psycho moved up to be ready to drag the next one. We skipped forward a couple of activations here, but the Ripper Knight spent 1 activation moving up, and I attempted to pounce on them. I sent out my shotgun champion and the combat rifle scaver and took a close-range blast from the shotgun, forgetting that unlike most grunts, knights can actually take 3 injuries before going down. I failed to one-shot the power-armored behemoth, and then got sniped down by the initiate's second shot. The pierce critical effect lowered her endurance enough where a psycho-boosted shot and some hot dice doubled her endurance value. The combat rifle scaver got another harm on the knight, putting him into a dangerous but not impossible position. He used his second activation to move into combat with my sniper, and on the other side of the terrain for my unactivated models. The second field scribe also scored a lucky shot on my psycho, kneeling her in 1 shot. Not seeing any other great plays this turn, I opted to pass early to keep the initiative for next turn. I used that initiative to activate my champion with a syringer who took careful aim and dropped the initiate. However, I was in trouble, because then the Flamer Paladin airdropped in and was able to catch 3 of my models with their upgraded Flamer, toasting 2 of them immediately, though my boss took only 1 harm. Then the Paladin charged in to make sure that I'd need to spend an action backing out instead of taking a pair of shots into them. My sniper backed out and completely whiffed on getting even another harm on the Ripper Knight, who then eviscerated my poor waster. This even only cost them a single action, as the knight had taken the charge perk, which lets them attack after their first move for free. I moved my combat rifle scaver towards the edge of the board and put a pair of harm onto the paladin with a combat rifle. And then the aspirant got 1 on my champion in return. My boss pulled back and got 2 more harm onto the paladin with her combat rifle thanks to the maim critical effect, putting him in a dangerous place at his harm limit. Then I spent my ploy to get 1 more activation out of my syringer champion, hoping that the poison could finish him off. However, I only got a single harm on him, causing only a single injury, which wrapped up turn 2, as my opponent had already passed, allowing them to take the initiative in turn 3, and burn things up with my paladin. My scaver evaporated, and both my boss and champion took some harm. My sniper took careful aim, but even with 3 extra dice from the harm, she still couldn't get past that tough armor. Then the aspirate took out my champion, the ignite from the laser rifle pushing the damage over her limit. Utilizing the fast keyword and the harm critical effect on the combat rifle, 2 rounds of shooting and a max harm knight chewed through his remaining 3 injuries. It had taken a lot of effort, but one power armored menace was done with. Since playing this game, I found out that this actually wouldn't work, since the combat rifle has lost its fast keyword, so you can't shoot twice, and also that the main critical effect does not actually cause an injury even if the target is at its harm limit. You only trigger an injury based on excess harm if you roll less than the target's endurance, but still at least 1 success. The other one charged my sniper and got some harm on her, but she somehow survived. The remaining field scribe had drugged one of the objective markers into my opponent's deployment zone, and the other was going after my boss, acting as a distraction while the aspirant worked to get the other objective marker. I'd only managed to get 1 marker into my deployment, and with only 2 models left, it didn't seem like I was going to be able to manage another. So I activated my boss first and shot down the middling scribe in a hail of bullets, purely out of spite. The Ripper Knight finally managed to take out my sniper before she could activate, though. And as expected, the Brotherhood were able to get the 2 objectives into their deployment zone and win the scenario. I was not expecting to end the game with only my boss left on the table. I'd started out with 9 models and was left with only 1 sole survivor. I'd even only taken out 2 enemies, the Initiate and the Paladin. The Paladin was a hard get for sure, but I'm not sure if I really used my resources effectively. The Operators seem like a faction where you really want to use the supporting fire capabilities to sacrifice crummy chip damage from grunts in order to superpower the heavy hits. Oh well, you live and you learn. Well, you do if you're my boss, at least. That's all for now. Stay safe out there in the wasteland.